What's up, guys? Today we are working on a 2.0 Audi Q5 2014, and it has a leaking lower timing cover. So in this video I'll be showing you how to fix the lower timing cover on the 2.0 engine. Let's jump into that right now. So as a lot of you know, to do a lot of jobs on these cars you have to put it in service mode, which means removing the front bumper and sliding the core support forward just a bit to get room to do cam belts, timing belts, etc., etc. There is a way to get around that. I know Naptown Tuner on YouTube does all of his jobs without removing the core support. I personally put it in service position just because it's easier. One of the first steps you're going to want to do is obviously remove these little push pin clips right here. And sometimes you struggle with these. There's a way I like to do them if you don't have a special tool, and it's actually to push the pin all the way through, if that makes sense. So let's take this one for example. So I have just a pin here. I'm going to push it through, come underneath it with a panel puller. Careful not to scratch the plastic, especially if it's a customer's car. And then you should be able to pop those up, and they're easy to lose. They fell right down there, so not a big deal, but that is the way that I get these off personally. So push them down. Again, one-hander, careful not to scratch the customer's car. Pop them up just like so. They have a little ridge here where the plastic goes in once you do that. And then to reinstall them, I push them all the way back out and pop them back in and insert them like that, and then clip that down. So to carry on down the line, we'll just go through and push those down. Just take your time, don't force it. These are really easy to break. So I just take my time, and eventually you'll get them out complete if you do it right. Now from here, the plastic piece gets lifted up and it slides backwards. There's little tabs underneath. Slide them this way and up. Now we're gonna get this air box removed here. Up and out of the way. You can remove this to give you a little bit more room. I don't think I really need to, but if we do, we'll come up and pop this off, and it'll give us some more wiggle room to get down in there. And I like to put a lot of the hardware that I take out right back where I found it. That way, you know, you don't lose your things, man. All right, this is the inside of the bumper here. You have this connector right here. There's a little tab on top. Pull that forward, and then slide that up. Push together first and then pull. That'll usually help them get unstuck. And then you have one more module right down under here. If you don't want to unplug this, you can probably just twist it out of here if I remember correctly. All right, we'll take these little T25 screws out of the top right here. Put those somewhere safe. And while we're up here, we'll about these T30s. All right, that's pretty much everything disconnected from the top now. We got those wires disconnected, all the bolts disconnected. Now we're gonna go underneath. Come over here to the tire and then the wheel well. And you're gonna find these little Torx T25 bolts. And then this little liner will pull forward. You get a bunch of dirt and grime out of it. And then we just got that 10mm bolt right there, but you don't gotta take that off. You can actually just pop this out. Because sometimes you can't, oh you can. Just grab that and pull it down. You can also, if you're having trouble with that, you can pop this off and just slide it out. So. And then right up here, just grab it right about here and pull it out. Just like that. No clips broken. All right, over to the other side. Gonna do the same thing. Guys, power tools save you so much time. I'll throw a link in the bio for this. Probably the best $180 I ever spent in my life. Can you imagine sitting here and just wrenching back and forth all day? No, thank you. If you value your time, man, those are key to have. I don't like turning ratchets no more. So I'm just throwing these all in a bin. I remember where they go. And let's pull this back and get all of our lovely road grime to fall on us. Same thing getting here. Push up first, grab the tab out, straight down. Easy peasy. Alright? Alright. Fender liner's done. Again, right here in the corner. Just grab, pull straight out. Look at that, someone already has it loose for me. Boom. Alright, everything from the top is now really disconnected. Here we are underneath the car. Now we're going to remove these bolts. These bolts, if I remember correctly, they have a little shoulder on them. So you remember to keep these separate. But just pop these guys out. Again, power tools all day long. Ugh. Why are you peeing on me? Did I just get R. Kelly'd by a bolt? Alright, see how those little bolts have a shoulder on them? So that's where those go. The shouldered bolts. Alright, so now you can just kind of grab her and slide her out. Pow! Just like so. And again, this is the customer's car, so I have foam pads down. This will never touch the ground or anything else. I kind of just have it resting barely up against this just in case it falls forward. We don't want that top heavy end to go. But again, I keep it super fresh, no damages. Another good tip is you could throw a piece of tape right over this strip right here. That way when you put the bumper back in, you don't scrape up the corners right here. All right, now back under the car, right in front of the sway bar, you have this little bar right here. Power tool its life away. All right, I also wanted to mention too, I'm not trying to disconnect any of the coolant lines, and I do not have a Freon machine to remove the Freon out of here either. So we're actually not removing this whole entire core support. We're gonna give her the old barn door. We're just gonna pull this down and just give us enough room to get into the top and get into the bottom where we need to. So next few steps is, I'll show you how to disconnect this hood latch right here, and then we're gonna be disconnecting this bumper down here. And we're just gonna kind of barn door this thing up a little bit where we just pull it out a few inches, because really all I need is a few inches to get my hand in there and work around that. So let's go ahead and disconnect this little hood latch. Let's pop those teeth and kind of pry it out. Same thing down here. Put a little tension on it. Put that somewhere safe. Pull up that. That'll pop the little door open, and it'll pop out just like that. And we don't want to put any pressure on this little plastic line. Obviously the other coolant hoses have a little bit more give in them. Not a lot, but enough to get up in here. So we're just going to stick this in, gently pull this up, give that a little wiggle. Let's leave that hanging right there. All right, down here we're going to disconnect the transmission lines just from the front. This will give us a little more room. That'll leave a little bit of flex, but not a lot. But we just need a couple inches in here anyway, so tight. All right, now we're just going to come right in here and undo this bumper. All right, now I'm popping bottom bolt off. All right, this one I'm not going to take all the way out. We're going to leave that in there just for now. And we'll just pull off some of this wiring just because it's going to give us that little extra push here. That can just stay loose. As minimal as possible. So on the other side here, same thing. I'm not going to take this one out all the way. And she already wants to drop. We're going to take off these T30s back here. So another solution once you take these bolts out is you can take a 1/4 inch extension here. And look, it like jams in there really tight. So 1/4 inch extension there, we're gonna slide it out on that. And if you don't have these, just go down to the store and get them. They're pretty cheap. Got another extra long one right here. And same thing. Stick it in the hole, slide it forward. Now let's pop out that last bolt. All right, so now pretty much the whole core support should start to wiggle forward here. Just feel everything for tension. Make sure nothing's getting yanked on. Like this isn't too tight. The lower coolant line right here, it actually has a little clip. But good old panel clip removers. Pull that up out the way. You can see right here that the extension's holding it from falling. And nothing else is really connected, but look at all that room for activities already. Check the intercooler tubing, make sure that's not getting too tight. Nothing's too tight back here. So yeah, pretty much these still want to put tension on it. You can just disconnect these, it's really simple if you need more room. I think we got enough room though. Nothing really has tension on it. All these pipes are still movable, and we got all this room to move now. Next, we're gonna want to take off the dipstick and this coolant line right here. I'm pretty sure coolant's gonna come out of here. I have not drained any coolant out. I'm just gonna catch whatever comes out of here into a bucket and deal with the consequences afterwards. And that's pretty annoying, but my GoPro decided not to record any audio for this, so here's my lovely voiceover. So with this move forward, you get about 4 or 5 inches of extra room. That gives you plenty of room to get to these Torx down here, just by moving this in the barn door fashion as we did. Really, you shouldn't have to move it any further than this. Headlights connected, everything's still connected. I throw a piece of wood in between so that way it does not move back and forth while I'm working on it. And that extension is going to hold it just fine without doing any damage to it. There's no tension on any of the pipes that would cause any damage, but again, you can disconnect the intercooler tubing there if you'd like and get a little bit more room. And then on the other side, same thing, a smaller piece of wood because there was less availability on that side. There was more tension on that side, should I say. So the smaller piece worked for this side. Again, no tension on any of the hoses, so definitely make sure that you're not yanking on it too hard. You don't want to break anything or crack anything. It gets expensive if you do that. Of course, my glove's ripping because that needs to be replaced. And now we're just removing these Torx that hold the oil dipstick in and the top of the little piece right there. Yank that out, set it to the side. Put these bolts back in so you don't miss where they go. And also, you guys do not need to disconnect this coolant line. I learned at the end I would have saved a lot of time had I just disconnected the bolt in the back and just flopped it up. You don't got to disconnect it to drain any of the coolant or anything like that. This bolt right here that I'm taking off, just take that off and the whole thing pulls up. I don't show that till later in the video, but keep on watching and you'll see exactly what I mean. That way you can save yourself this step and having to put your coolant in and burp it and make sure it's all good, and also avoid this mess right here. Also, a fun fact, if this is open or you disconnect this and you open your door with the battery connected, that will squirt out coolant, we learned. So here we're removing the tensioner, releasing the belt, and getting that out of the way. Here is the special tool you'll need to remove the crank pulley on these 2.0 engines. There's a link in the description below. Definitely need this tool for this job. If it's your first time with this tool, I suggest just going down and just seeing how it works, fitting it into the notches so you know how it works. And then you'll just put a breaker bar or a ratchet into the end of it and put your socket in there first before you attach everything. It'll kind of hold it together. And my technique is I like to put the ratchet underneath the frame rail there. So You can set it up so that it basically holds for you, and then you don't got to have another arm holding that bottom ratchet, if that makes sense. So set it on a frame rail, and I just break it back like this, and sometimes a little tool falls out, you'll just need to find the hole again. So just reset it, make sure it's all lined up. Make sure you're not crushing anything too underneath the ratchet when you're pulling down. Make sure it's just on the frame rail. And yeah, just keep working at it. And this one was relatively easy to get off. Came off first try, really. So this tool is 100% needed for this job. You can't really skip this tool, and it's only 25 bucks. So definitely don't try to skip that. Next, remove the crank pulley. Remove this bolt. And keep in mind, you do have to replace this bolt. This is a stretch bolt. You cannot reuse this bolt. Do not suggest reusing that. Just go get a new one. Here you can see the 4 holes that the tool goes into. That's how it locks to get this out. And on the back of the crank pulley here, there is this little break in the pattern here. It's like a little triangle. That's basically the keyway that gets locked back in. So this is what you have to line up when reinstalling it. Now that we have the crank pulley removed and everything else out of the way, we have access to all of these T30 bolts right here. Except we do need to remove this tensioner out of the way right here. Just the bearing on the outside of it. You don't need to remove the whole thing. But this is full access to the whole entire job here. So I don't believe you need to go any further than this, and you can take it off. And now it's time to start removing the T30s. And of course, the second one I touch just strips. Watch it just rip out the guts there. So move on to that. See if we can get an extractor on it later. And moving along the line, just getting these out of the way. Take your time, you don't want to strip these, and unfortunately the last mechanic used the old hardware. You're going to have to replace all these bolts. Don't reuse the old hardware, or they're just going to strip, or they could possibly break. And if they break off in the lower part of the block right there, it's not going to be fun for you. So just spend the extra money, get new hardware after you remove all these. That way you don't have any future issues. This thing was just fixed by a local mechanic shop, and it's leaking oil crazy, so it was brought to me to fix this repair once again. And here we see all old hardware used. Imagine that. So now going down the line, finish on these last little 2. We're going to have to remove this tensioner out of the way. You just have to remove the little bearing pulley part of it. You don't have to remove the whole thing. Then we come back through with the electric ratchet and remove all these real quick like. And now you can enjoy some smooth jazz while I take these Torx out. And of course, we couldn't forget about the lovely stripped bolt we have right here. This wasn't enough room for me to get my extractor in there, as you can see here. I tried a few times, it was hard to drill it out. I'll show you how I get it out here in just a second. Alright, so you can see that like chisel mark on the side right there. I stuck a chisel, sharp chisel, and I cut a notch in that bolt, and then it broke free. The drill bit wouldn't fit because of the radiator fan right here. So I had to do it like that, but got that free now. All right, now when you're removing the cover here, it's pretty hard to get the gasket out, and you want to be careful not to bend it. So what I'll do is I'll usually take a sharp little pick, and I'll come around all the edges, and I cut all the sealant as deep as you can pretty much, and get it all off the ridges and stuff like that and make it clean. And then you want to be careful not to like mar or scratch anything. And there's like a little notch right underneath here, and if you're ever so careful and you wiggle with the right leverage, you can have a successful go at this from right here. And I like to use like trim removal tools too. There we go. So remember, there's a dowel on each side of it too. There's a dowel over here and a dowel over here. So yeah, kind of just move around and work your way at it. And there you have it. All right, so now we're just cutting off and removing all the old RTV, so nothing too exciting here. Alright guys, so I was in the process of cleaning this gasket material off. Remember, this is the customer's car. This was replaced a few thousand miles ago before they brought it to me from the timing chains and all that stuff. The shop used the old hardware and just put it back in there. And you can see, like, I just removed the RTV and it clearly cleaned off, like with a flap disc or something like that, to prep the surface, which is totally normal before you put RTV on. But as I was coming around here, I noticed this spot down here. This is right where the car is leaking oil, exactly from the spot, right below the dipstick area. And you can see where this paint is right here. And if this was even surface on the metal here, this paint would actually be missing when they cleaned up the rest of this paint. See how this paint's gone and this isn't? This signifies that there's a little bend in it. And from the side profile, you can see there's a little divot there, perhaps where they pried it open to get it off, because that's the easiest access point. Guys, if you're doing these covers, never pry from the bottom, only pry from the top. You won't have pressure up top as much, and it definitely won't leak as much, and it's a lot easier to fix. Don't pry from down here. Again, this is the customer's car, so I showed them what the issue was, and I let them choose. I could either hammer this down and try to fix it to the best of my abilities, but I'd hate for it to be leaking and come back in here. So they went ahead and went to the dealership and got a new oil pan just so we don't have to worry about it. This comes with a new crank seal. We did get a new crank bolt. These are stretch bolts, so you should replace these as well when doing this job. It has a gasket on the middle up here as well too, to prevent any leaks, because there is oil on the end of this bolt as well. And then of course we have new timing cover bolts, which is always recommended. As you saw earlier in the video, I had a stripped bolt, and that's because old hardware was used. If new hardware was used, it wouldn't happen. So it's really not that much extra to just go about it doing the right way. So now we're gonna get gasket on here. We're gonna lay our silicone bead, and we have the engine surface prepped. So we're gonna get this ready to get hooked up and jump into that now. All right, so about to put the gasket on there. We're using the genuine Volkswagen sealant. In my opinion, it's always better. You can get away with using regular RTV if you can afford it. Get the good stuff though, and it's a little easier to compress than the other brands and stuff like that too. So we're just gonna make a nice solid bead all the way around this piece. All right, there we have the finished result. It doesn't have to be perfect. This will get squished down. But just lay it down like that. And now remember, when picking it up, you actually have to be very careful of where you grab it, because you can't grab the outside edges right here. So you can grab it from the inside of the seal if you're very careful, or figure out your own way. You can grab it from these little things right here, but you have to figure out how you're gonna hold your hand to install it. All right, so now we got the surface area here prepped and cleaned up. Little spot there I'll get before I throw it on there. But you want your surface area really clean, so take the extra time, get it clean. You don't want to do this again. We got a saying here, and it's do it right or do it twice. Also, look at the sloppy job from the mechanics before, like RTV in there, RTV here I cleaned up. Just because you take it to a German shop doesn't mean you're getting good care of your car, so that's why I don't drop my car off anywhere. But yeah, so make it look like that. And one of the best ways to do that is get yourself one of these little abrasive pads and you just slice them into strips. It's a really weird angle. Like, I had to stand on a bucket and scrub it, so no one wants to watch me scrub this thing down for that long, so I skipped it. But yeah, that is how you want your finished result. And clean it up and get ready for the gasket to go on there. Also, you may have to drain a little bit of this oil, because if this oil keeps leaking out while we're trying to make a clean seal, we don't want any of that. So I'm actually going to suction just enough out so we know that nothing's going to leak here or mess with my gasket, because the gasket's going to sit on here for an hour before I torque it down, and I wouldn't want any oil up in the mix. So that's what I'm going to do, and then we'll get this timing cover siliconed up. So I guess best bet is to just try to line up the dowels first. Careful of the tensioner. And it's really hard because you can't see shit. Just find the dowels with your fingers. And then slide it in. Once it's on the dowels, it kind of just pushes in. Give it a nice little gentle push. You don't want to put it too hard. And then come back through and double check all your holes are lined up. Just double check how it's looking. Sucks when the light dies. Sorry about the bright light. But yeah, just make sure all the holes are lined up. Get those dowels on the side lined up. And that's how you should be looking. And now remember, we're just gonna set the bolts in there. We're not gonna torque anything down. Just gonna set them in. All right, so this is how I do it. I just put a little extension on the Torx, and I start these by hand, start up top and just go around. And I put them in like just tight enough by hand, let them sit for an hour, and then come back and retorque them. You gotta let this stuff sit and cure before you come back through and tighten it all down. So you can't just squeeze it all out right now. It's not how it works. I got my bro here helping me with some light work because my light died. I'm gonna one-hander dander this in. And again, pretty much just getting these just sunk down with your hand. You can use whatever you want. You don't got to use this. I might actually switch to a longer one. So here I'm just setting the bolts in. I'm not tightening them down that much at all. Just getting them ready for the electric ratchet to come through. That way to save my hand some rotations here. And then basically I'll just use the electric ratchet until you feel a little bit of resistance. I don't tighten it down at all. Wait an hour for the gasket material to start curing, and then I come back through and tighten it with the proper torque specs to do it the right way. Do it right or do it twice. You don't want this thing leaking on you again. So we got the torque wrench set to 10 Newton meters, and that is the torque required for this. And I'm sure there is a special torque sequence this goes into where you start at one bolt and go to the next, but just use your common sense and go crisscross right next to each other. Whatever, it's not going to matter a whole lot as long as you are doing it slow and following the process and torquing it down to the specifications. So make sure all the bolts are checked. Go over them all twice just to make sure you don't want to lose one. Alright, so now we have all the bolts torqued in. Alright, real quick while I got it all out too. Here's the crank for the car. Here's the special tool that you need, right? So this tool, those little notches, fit right into the crank. Just like that. And that's how you lock this up. Put a ratchet right here. And that's how you lock this crank up to get the right torque. Because torquing this is actually a pain in the ass. And remember, there's a link in the description for this tool. This $25 tool can save you a lot of money and a lot of hassle, so definitely worth it. When installing the crank, remember that little tiny triangle right there? That's got to line up with the triangle on the other keyway, so got to make sure that's accurate too. So now I'm just putting the crank in. I put a little bit of oil right here because there's a seal. And I know that the triangle is right up around top right here. I just wanted to show you guys something. Putting this crank on here can be difficult sometimes because the way that that keyway rotates. You can see it on this side if I set it. If I go past the keyway, it raises up. On both sides it wants to bump up. So once you feel that, that's when you're in, and then that's when you want to put your bolt in. And you want to make sure it doesn't leave that keyway until you get synced up. Let's jump to the torque specs. Alright, so here's my setup with the wrench. Basically, I turn this crank pulley until this pops in, and then I want to get my breaker bar up against the frame rail. Make sure it's not hitting any wires or hoses, obviously. But with that up against the frame rail, then you're able to push this down and get this tightened. So now I'm going to remove this, and we're going to go grab a torque wrench, and we're going to get that tightened. This has tension on it right now because I turned it this way, if that makes sense, until there was tension here. So this is ready to be torqued right now. Alright, so there's a conversion. If you need 150 Newton meters is 110 foot-pounds. So we got our rad at 110 foot-pounds or 150 Newton meters. Plus 90 degrees. And by no means is this a little torque wrench. It's a pretty good sized torque wrench. So let's see how it goes for the 110 foot-pounds here. 110 foot-pounds. Now we remove the torque wrench, pop the socket off. All right, just grabbing a 90-tooth gear wrench ratchet. And you should use a breaker bar for this, but my breaker bar is a little tied up right now, so we're gonna see what we can do here. And we're just gonna slap the whole jack handle on it. All right. Now we're gonna see if we get a good 90. When doing this, you're gonna feel like you're gonna break this bolt. You have to go as hard as you can. I had the whole jack handle on here and was like yanking this thing. It's a stretch bolt. That's how it gets its final torque specifications. It's the way you have to do the final 90-degree turn. It is just how you do it. So don't stop till you get that 90 degrees. Get your foot up in there if you got to. Let's go.
Good job, Daddy.
Holy shit. All right, back out to the car, and we still got an oil leak. So there's where the pan's fixed. So that's where we fixed the pan. That's my gasket job. It was leaking from there as well. And then it was running over and leaking from right here. And so we just thought it was the timing cover up top, but obviously the top is sealed and we got a leak here still. It's also leaking in the back, and you can see whoever did this last is just very shoddy work. So now we gotta do this oil pan. But before we do the oil pan, I'm just gonna finish up this job, push the front core support back in. We're gonna put the alternator belt back on and get it buttoned up, just because I don't need to do anything with the core support to get down there. So we're gonna hook all this back up. So in reverse order, exactly how you took it off, we're gonna put it back together. Let's go. All right, so I'm pulled the wood out of these sides, and it's just sitting on these 1/4 inch extensions still. So what's gonna happen next is we're just gonna sandwich this all up against each other and get this mounted up, put these bumper bolts back in, and then we're gonna start hooking up all the other lines and cables and such. All right, so we're gonna reinstall the pulley. All right, now we're just gonna slide on this alternator belt real quick. Serpentine belt, whatever you want to call it. All right, so then of course check, make sure it's not overlapping anywhere, make sure it's lined up properly. But pretty much the easiest serpentine belt ever. Just right on that tensioner, right around there, up the back of this. So that's done and ready to go. Now we're gonna push this core support back and start hooking everything back up. All right, so definitely watch the corners and make sure you don't scuff anything up. And careful of these plastics, they're there for a reason. I'll just grab the bumper from the inside here and lift up a little bit. And you'll feel it just slide on those extensions. All right, so then we're gonna take the screws and start them up here, just because it's a good holding point. So from here, I'll just pick this up, get that bolt hole lined up. The small screws go in the back. And also this headlight one right here never really needed to come out, unless you need some more slack out of your headlight. All right, let's bring some more one-hand action back. So let's get that clipped up on there. Let's push down, ready to go. We can get this rerouted. Keep that in the front, like this. Just leave that there for now. All right, so we got these top screws removed. Remember, you really don't gotta remove these ones, this one, or that one if you're only doing the barn door service like I did. You can leave all these in there. But that's what I put in. I lined this up, got it close to the witness marks. We can readjust this. This isn't that tight. It's just to hold it. Next, we want to come down here and we want to get a bolt going in that hole and a bolt going in that hole. All right, I got the top loosened a little bit. Now I'm going to want to push up and in until I can get this started with my fingers. Los manos. That's it. I'm not going to sink it down that much at all. Just a little bit, because you can see it's not lined up yet. So we're going to come down here to this other side, and same thing. We're going to get this side lined up. Yeah, and there I go getting ahead of myself, guys. You still got this coolant line here, which you do not have to remove this to do this job. You can simply just pull it up like this. But this gets attached back on. And the little bolt that goes there is this little T30. So we got the oil dipstick. Again, put this in before so you have room to work. Then you gotta pop off this little one from the timing case. And this, folks, is why it's important to watch a video, so you don't make an oopsie. Because very little room here. If you got stubbies, stubbies work nice. But really, I'm using these like cheap Lexavon T30s. That is just me getting ahead of myself. All right, so I got some bolts started on the side. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lift up at the same time and get it zinged in there. Yep, pretty much right on the money, so. So now your extension will just slide right out. Now we can come back up top and tighten these things down. Remember, you'll have these little guys back here too. Now push it from the bottom up in. There we go, stay there. Not too hard. There we go, just get it close to the witness marks right there. And then check your light, obviously, you want it to line up. Push this in just a little bit, same way. Slightly on the bottom of that. Alright, that one's done. Alright, camera's about to die, but I'm going to throw these in the bottom here. This just goes on to the little bracket. Tighten them up. That's everything buttoned up and ready for the bumper. So when you're installing the bumper, watch the back corners right next to the tires. Make sure that you don't scratch the fenders up. Sometimes they can overlap and scratch. Otherwise, just line it up with the two holes right up front. Take your time, line up all the tabs. Don't force anything. If you force something, it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right, so take your time. Alright, so we got the bumper tabs lined up. Everything's looking good. I line it up right here. Right on those, right in that hole right there, because it just kind of sits up there and it gives you a good guide point, so everything locks into place from there. So all sealed up here, and pull this little inner fender back a little bit when you're pushing this, otherwise it'll get it'll push back against you here. So we're actually just going to put these little screws in real quick. Now we got those modules that we disconnected, if you guys remember from the beginning. So we'll pick up this module. Alright, that wire is all clipped back in, all the way across. Now you just have the bolts for the underside of the bumper, and you have the bolts for the fender liners here. Alright, let's hook this guy back up while we're up here. While we're up here getting her done. Very easy, very easy. Get that little ball in there. Just like so. When you close it, then pull the wire back and then get it in those slots right there. You want that locked in there, and rotate it this way. And then this clip, this circle part goes around that ring, so it keeps it locked in place. And you just clip that down, flip it, flip it and clip it. While we're here, we don't really need nothing else up here, so we'll just button this up. It kind of goes like under the taillights right there, that little tab. Then take your time, you don't want to break these, just go on the top, pop it in. Same thing with that, it just folds back there. And then the plastic clips, I'll push up like that. All right, now we're back onto the car. We're gonna take those collared bolts that we took out from the bumper, and we're gonna finagle those back in there. Should be 4 of them. And of course you got the fender liner, pop that in, throw those bolts in. If you made it this far, you already know how to do that. Also, if you've been following, we found another leak. So tune into the next video and I'm going to show you guys how to do the oil pan gasket as well. We just did the lower timing cover. Now we're going to do the oil pan gasket because it's still clearly leaking right here. And we may even possibly have a leak up here on a turbo feed line. So tune into the next video. And if this video helped you fix a leak on your Audi Q5 or anything with your Audi, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. It helps me create more content for you guys. I appreciate the support as always. Till next time, thank you. Also, don't be like me and forget to connect your intake back up, because once this is on, you can't get it. So we're just going to peel this back up, slide it in this, won't break nothing. And we can screw that. Alright, so I've been trying to do this at the end of my job so I actually show all the tools that were used here. So this is pretty much everything. I didn't leave anything out. I haven't put anything away yet. This is everything I used to do this job on this car. So a few key points. You're going to need a large torque wrench. You're going to need this special tool and large breaker bar. As you can see, I have some pretty good size 1/2 inch wrench. And it doesn't need to be brand name anything. It just needs to be the tool. Small torque wrench, that's good for the front of the case, so you actually are torquing the bolts down to 7 foot-pounds or 10 Newton meters. I use this on the impact because that's a lot faster, saves me time. You'll need the extensions to slide the core support forward, that way you don't have to take everything apart. You can slide them on there, so just go buy some cheap extensions from Harbor Freight or something like that are really long. Some small ratchets help for the tight spots, and obviously you need a Torx T25, Torx T30, a really good light. Power tools save you so much time, but you need hand tools as well. So this is everything I used right here in the cart. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them below. I answer all my questions. I always talk to you guys. Love y'all support. Thank you so much. Peace. Yo, and if this video helped you guys out, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. All that support helps me create more content for you guys so I can continue to do this. I'd rather do this than work, and I'd rather produce content for you guys to help other people. So come follow the channel. Tune into the next video to see the oil pan done. Thanks for watching this far. Peace.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.